not-so-dismal science of economics. I am professor of economics at the University of Winnipeg, and I've taught a number of areas in economics and done research in several different areas as well. And so from time to time, I get calls from the media asking me to comment on questions. So I thought it might be useful to put a longer form answer to these questions that come up fairly often as a resource for both the media and the public. And there may even be some students who are interested in some of these ideas, perhaps for research papers, etc. So today I want to talk about inflation. I talked about price levels and inflation last day, and I think it's very, very important to figure out what is the relationship between the price levels and government activity. In a sense, government activity can lead to inflation only if the spending is financed by monetary means. I'll explain in a minute what that means. In general, if the government wants to spend, it has three options. One option is to borrow from the public. So, this could be a bond sale to the general public. In Canada, we used to have Canada Savings Bonds, uh, or you can sell it to the financial institutions who purchase bonds, usually treasury bills or some bonds which are denominated in longer terms, and they use that for part of their uh, debt management, but also that becomes a component of some of the pension plans that individuals have. So you might have some fixed incomes in that, and some of those might be government Canada bonds. So in both those cases, interest has to be paid on those bonds. So basically, as you know, a bond is money that is transferred from either the public in the first case or the financial institution. The second case to the government, who uses those proceeds for spending, and then the government must pay back that borrowing with interest payments, or if it's uh, in depending on the denomination. Now, the third method is the one that's always controversial, and this is the one where the government actually doesn't sell it to the public or the financial institutions, but it sells it to the central bank, whichever central bank is controlling or is associated with the government. So just like the procedure that takes place in the latter two cases, now the bonds, which are issued by the federal government in this case, are then taken by or are bought by the Bank of Canada, who then credits the federal government's account with the equivalent amount of that bond. And so the government, once again, is going to have to pay back those bonds. But now, in a sense, this is new money that is available for the government to spend. So this money, the first case will involve some effects on the economy, but in general, the third one is where the money supply is expanded. Now, it'll only be expanded if, when it's spent, if the subsequent spending rounds take place. So that is really where the concern is. So the concern is monetary financing of government spending. That's the issue. And if you look at all the countries that have inflation rates that are in the double, triple digits, those are all countries where this is taking place. Now, the interesting issue is, in many ways, how is that relationship um, conducted? So, if you think about it, in many cases, there is supposed to be what's called arm's length between the Bank of Canada and, say, the federal government in Canada. meaning that the Bank of Canada has been established through legislation, which gives it a broad mandate in terms of what to do. So the issue then is, what is the Bank of Canada's mandate? For for fairly recent time, the Bank of Canada's mandate has been to maintain price stability. And so you could see that other objectives might be to manage macroeconomic changes in the economy, which is a broader responsibility. So the question that comes up is, what is the role of the bank now in relation to the federal government? So let's look back at the COVID period. So during the COVID period, what you had is the federal government felt that extraordinary spending was required. Now, in a sense, the government had not just borrowing options, it also had taxation options. So presumably, if it wanted to fund um, income supports to individuals who were, for one reason or for health reasons, in a sense, shuttered from their businesses, then taxes could be levied on the people who are still working, and those revenues could have been used to finance the transfers. But that wasn't done because, in a sense, the government was thinking that if we did that, then we would contract economic activity. But notice, what happens though is, so you still have to get the spending from somewhere, and if most of the spending is financed by selling bonds to the central bank, then that is really what leads to inflation. And so, and it's been generally recognized that inflation in many ways is like another tax, because what it does is it allows the government to spend money without taxing explicitly. Now, how does that end up being an inflation tax? Well, what it does is it reduces the purchasing power of the people in the economy. So, for example, suppose prices go up 20%, so you have 20% less purchasing power. Then what the government could have done is just taxed you 20% in either a lump sum or some other fashion. And that would be an equivalent reduction in purchasing power. But you can see that taxing is never usually politically popular. So governments often err on the side of finding other ways to spend, and those ones either through borrowing from the public. But the problem with that is that you also have to make interest payments back. But so it's not surprising, and I don't think this is the purview of any particular political party. But in general, all governments err on the side of using monetary finance for extraordinary spending. In general, in normal times, you would expect the governments to sort of manage their budgets without resorting to monetary finance. But in extraordinary times, they usually use monetary policy to do that. But it does bring the bigger question is, how are you going to ensure that the Bank of Canada's mandate is still maintained, or if you're going to change its mandate, what is that mandate going to be? And I think that is really the issue that comes up. And so I think as we as we go forward, inflation is coming down, but in the previous discussion, I mentioned that the price levels are in the range of 20% higher than they were before. So I think, in a sense, there's going to be a discussion, or there's a needed discussion on whether the role of the bank is going to change, or whether this is just an extraordinary period. So I hope you like this video, and if so, you can give it a like and subscribe to this channel. So bye for now.